Good morning. I haven't uploaded anything in a couple of weeks, so I just thought I'd do a very, very, very quick update video, just basically saying why and what's happened, and also another couple of other little bits and pieces, but possibly something super cool. So, also excuse this. I live in the UK, and the weather has just decided it's time for us to die. Right. First things first. So originally, and this is a while ago, I put up the SD card image for the PlayStation Legacy and the Sega Megapive, which were the two Raspberry Pi based consoles, micro consoles that I built. And I was quite proud of the images for both of those. They're not the first ones I've ever built, but I was super proud of those. So I thought, fair enough, if I can make it, anyone can make it. Like, I am about as amateur as it gets. So I took the images and threw them up on my OneDrive. The link is up the top, and it's also down the bottom. So the OneDrive images that I originally put up were split into three parts, and they were password protected and whatnot. I got quite a few comments from people saying that they couldn't fit them on a 128 gig SD card, which was really weird because I've been using these same .img files. I use them as backups. So if anything goes wrong, I'll just format the SD card and throw it on again. And I've done that a couple of times with no issues. So I don't know whether it was the type of SD card that people were using or the type of SD card that I built them on. I have no clue. Like I said, complete amateur. I'm fumbling my way through this. So I then get contacted a couple of weeks ago by a YouTube user in the comments by the name of Scoony Marshall. Now, Scoony Marshall, you absolute legend, right? Not only did he manage to identify the problem, he's also managed to solve the problem and send me a link to the solution. So what it was sometimes Raspberry Pi images, they come up a little bit too big. So what he did was he ran it through something called PiShrink. So he took my original .img files, ran it through something called PiShrink. Now what PiShrink does is just compacts the .img file down, but it's still in a usable state. So all you would do is get the new shrunken .img file, same process, open up Win32 Disk Imager, just click write, and it's done. It could not be simpler. It's literally a one-button process. So he sent me that, and what I've done is I've taken that and put that up into the OneDrive as well. So currently in the OneDrive, there are two .rar files. Now the RAR files are my original .imgs, and they are for the PlayStation Legacy, which is exactly the same as it was, no change there at all. The second one is for the Sega Megapive. Now that is slightly different. What I've done is, again, I've not changed any of the ROMs, I've not changed anything else. I fixed two little issues that I had. I had one issue where some of the reset button, which takes you back to Emulation Station, wasn't working. So I figured out what the issue was and I fixed it. So now every single system that you play, whether it's Megadrive, SG-1000, Sega CD, Sega, whatever, Megadrive, you press the reset button, it takes you back to Emulation Station, no problem. All of them. That's the first fixed issue. The second thing is that since making that, I've also got one of these, which is the Retrobit? Yeah, Retrobit Bluetooth, officially licensed Bluetooth Megadrive 6-button controllers, which are excellent. Unfortunately, they're an utter nightmare to get working. So I set up a new UDEV rule, and it all works beautifully. So what I've done is I've also shrunken the image with that ready. So if you want to get one of these, and I highly recommend getting one of these, they're about 30 quid, but they are amazing for the Megadrive stuff, especially for the build that I've made, which is just like Sega stuff. Highly recommended, and you literally just sync up the Bluetooth and it works. Like there should be no issue there at all. And then the Megapive Shrunk, that's a 7-zip image, but that is just the shrunken version if you're having issues getting it on the SD card. Scoony Marshall, the utter legend, says that he's also done the PlayStation Legacy in a shrunken format, and as soon as I get that, that's going up there as well. So there'll be 4 disk images for you to download. Take your pick, whatever you want, put it on there. But the 2 PlayStations and the 2 Megapives will be exactly the same, just smaller. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that I've also been getting a lot of comments saying, where did I buy the cases? I actually made those cases. I've got, if you can find PlayStation cases, like specific Raspberry Pi cases or Megadrive cases, and you want the SD images to, the cases and the SD images to go together, by all means go for it. Like, there are some fantastic cases out there. But what I try and do, especially on this channel, is build things for as cheap as possible. So what I did was I actually bought a brand new PlayStation Classic. There's really bad PlayStation Minis that Sony knocked out like the end of last year, I think, or no, the end of the year before last. They were terrible. So I managed to pick up one new for like 30 quid, 35, 36 quid, something like that. Gutted it, put a Raspberry Pi in, and then put all the little micro switches in and stuff like that. So I actually built that, essentially, like hand built it. And when I say hand built it, I actually mean hand built it as well. I don't use any 3D printers. I don't use any expensive tools or workshop or anything like that. I use cheap tools. I use, like, from the pound shop, like those kind of tools, disposable tools almost. Sandpaper, files, like little hand files, cheap screwdrivers, super glue, hot glue, things like that. So I made it super cheap because that's essentially what this channel is about. How do you build stuff that looks good but super cheap? So I actually built the PlayStation Legacy out of an old PlayStation Classic, and the Sega MegaPi I've actually built from a retro electro scaled figurine. So there's a company called Retro Electro. If I can find the link, I'll put it in the bottom. Retro Electro make these scaled, tiny little scaled console, essentially figurines that you would put on a shelf. And what I did was I gutted it, put in a Raspberry Pi, and then wired up all the micro switches exactly the same as I did with PlayStation Legacy. Not only did I do it exactly the same as the PlayStation Legacy, I also put all of the buttons in the same spots on the GPIO pins. So, if you want to build the projects like I have, like the little Mega Drive or the little PlayStation, you absolutely 100% can. If I can do it, anyone can do it, and it doesn't need to cost a lot of money. You can just use cheap tools, super glue, stuff like that. You want to do it, you can. The SD images are on the OneDrive. Just download the SD images and you are good to go. What I'm going to do is I'm going to link up the top and down the bottom again the video where I tell you what GPIO pins. There are 2 rows of 20 pins, so there are 40 pins on a Raspberry Pi, and you need to connect the drive light and the on and off switch and the the reset switch to a GPIO pin. If you don't solder, or you don't know how to solder, or you can't solder, or you just don't want to solder, you totally don't need to. If you get little DuPont cables, you can almost push an LED pin, LED into the end of those DuPont cables. So even then, even if you're not confident enough in soldering, I mean, you can solder it, but if you don't want to, you don't have to. And I go through all of that on the video. I show you which GPIO pins to connect which wires to. It could not be simpler. Again, if I can do this, anyone can do this, because I have no idea what I'm doing. So that's that. So no, I didn't buy the cases, but you can, and there are really good ones out there, but you can also make them. And 2, the SD images to go with those cases are completely free. You can download them as many times as you want. They're unpassworded. Just go for it. Big ones and small ones. Secondly, I'm just going to take a moment. Hang on. I'm just going to take a moment to mourn the passing of my cheap Chinese capture card. Unfortunately, the capture card that I have used for 2 years is now with the angels in Chinese bootleg tech heaven. Yeah, the capture card that I've been using for a while now has unfortunately... So, I will not be able to upload or stream any, for the moment, classic retro games like Mega Drive, Master System, things like that. Like when I did my Sega Palooza, like that stuff. However, since the capture card has died, and I mean since that in the last couple of days, I have been building a Gen 6 Plus emulation system. So from the 6th generation onwards, the Raspberry Pi is like, I'm a huge Raspberry Pi advocate, but the Raspberry Pi is never ever going to be able to handle a lot of the N64 stuff, because that's a nightmare to go on a single board computer anyway. Like, N64 is just a complete minefield that I hate. It's also never going to do GameCube, it's never going to do Wii, PS2, it's never going to do... It does Dreamcast, but it's a bit spotty. Like, the Saturn stuff is also a bit spotty. So I built a machine specifically for PlayStation 2, GameCube, Wii, Dreamcast, Saturn, stuff like that. And it's working. I'm working on it. It's a Linux machine, but it's like an i5 with an NVIDIA card put in and loads of, it's a nice machine, and it does really well what it's supposed to do. So I can stream from that. I could also stream Amiga stuff, which is like my favorite thing. I can also stream Amiga stuff from that while the capture card gets replaced with another Chinese bootleg capture card. So anyway, seeing as I have all of these, I should be able just to rip them and stream them on that as well. So, like I say, it's not a problem. But yeah, for the moment, my retro stuff, like the stuff that I really enjoy, like editing, streaming, and putting together, for the moment, it's not looking like I'm going to be able to for a while. But hopefully later. All right, so yeah, that's it. That's basically what I wanted to put together. So again, Scooney Marshall, you absolute legend. I cannot express how appreciative I am for not having to... I just don't have the time at the minute. Like, February is a super busy month for me anyway. I haven't got the time to go through PyShrink and try and figure all that out. And the fact that you've managed to not only identify the problem, but then give me the solution, like literally send me a link with the solution in it. Oh, absolute legend. Cannot thank you enough. So yeah, that's it. So basically, download them. If you need any sort of like help with building like the cases that I buy, the cases that I build, and it's not just the PlayStation Legacy case or the Megapive case. Like, I actually build other cases as well. I built a flux capacitor, a working flux capacitor retro console, and other little bits and pieces as well. If you need, I built an arcade machine retro micro console as well. So if you check the channel, you'll actually see there's a playlist with all of my like Raspberry Pi builds in there. You can do any of those. Like, you can make any of those. And my controllers as well. I like started to mod controllers at some point, just with paint and bits of, cheap Chinese components that I find. I'm doing another one now, that little purple wireless PS2 controller down there. I'm actually modding that as well. So you can do this stuff. You can do it cheap. I have faith in you. Like I said, if I can do it, anyone can do it. But yeah, that's it for now. So, like I say, get downloading. Any problems, hit me up in the comments. Cool. Peace.